Today, I'm very delighted to have Professor Huang Ping, the president of the National Association of American Studies at China Academy for Social Sciences. Professor Huang, it's very nice to meet you today.
Nice to meet you too.
Well, the world has just witnessed two big power transitions in November, and one was the U.S. presidential election, and the other was the Chinese Communist Party's 18th National Congress. And people expect that the power transitions in both countries would naturally result in changes in the relations between the two countries. What do you think?
I think changes, of course, but also in the meantime there has been definitely a continuity too. Obama, of course, is his second term. For China, this leadership transition will also continue the opening reform policies for China and for the world. So on the one hand, you saw there will be some changes, positive changes, hopefully, but in the meantime, there is a continuity.
What kind of changes, for example?
Both countries will need to work together in handling those new challenges, problems, difficulties, world, global, economic, as well as regional issues, either traditional or non-traditional issues. So if people or governmental leadership does not change, this will be impossible for either U.S. or Chinese leaders to actually handle. So they will have to change. But on the other hand, I don't see fundamentally there will be some kind of shift.
What new approaches or policies do you expect to see from the re-elected U.S. president and the new Chinese leaders in the handling of China-U.S. relations?
I don't know if we should say there will be new approaches. There will be something new, definitely. For China, we have proposed something called new type of power relations. This actually does not only mean between U.S. and China. There should be a new type of relationship. But definitely U.S. and China relations has to be a kind of new type of relationship. Basically, it means we should not continue whatever zero-sum or Cold War paradigm, but rather for a more collaborative relationship.
Right. For
bilateral as well as for the regional global challenges. And for the U.S., I think if you see anything new, as I said, both China and U.S. will have a continuity. But on the other hand, Obama administration in his second term will have to work harder with its partners and with countries like China in order, even only for the U.S. interests, economic recovery, but also many other issues. Now, U.S. will need to be more collaborative.
And when you say continuity, what does it mean? Continuity in terms of
when Obama began his first term, he and Chinese leaders, either during his visit to China or Chinese President Hu Jintao's visit to the U.S., they have agreed that U.S.-China relations should be something positive, collaborative, and comprehensive. I think this definitely should be and will be continued for the very basic sort of structure.
You also mentioned there are many challenges, problems, and issues that exist between the two countries. So in your opinion, what do you believe to be the biggest issue or obstacle, let's say, that is creating tension between the two countries at the moment?
First, I think the biggest issue, which is not necessarily an obstacle or difficulty between the two, but the biggest issue US-China will have to work for is the economy. Not only U.S. domestic nor Chinese domestic economies, but the world economy as a whole. And as the two biggest economies in the world, U.S. and China, we will have to work very seriously on this. More than just recovering from the crisis, but restructuring the world economy and the economic sort of adjustment. So this is the biggest issue U.S. government, Chinese government will have to put for their first agenda. And this will also make them have to sort of work together in a collaborative manner. In terms of challenges, even only in the economy, for instance, trade, of course, we shared lots of interests, and there are a lot of difficulties. And each country will have to consider its own priorities. So there will be many differences, problems in between. But this does not necessarily mean we will have to handle sort of zero-sum, even in economy. Competition, of course. Competition basically is a good thing. But so see how we work. And there has been lots of sort of problems between the two economies. So there will be, on the one hand, the interdependence you see has been so sort of deep. But along with such interdependence, there are also lots of disputes, problems in between.
For example?
U.S. blames China on for instance, exchange rates, and also on how China's economy can be more integrated into the world economy, which is also China's interest too, but how to, say, play the games according to the rules. So from the U.S. side, they have lots of, say, difficulties with China. And China also needs, for instance, definitely first, the market status. Still, we haven't had this. Not only from the U.S. recognition, but from U.S. as well. And China is also investing in the U.S., so there are many difficulties still. The intellectual property rights and another thing. So between the U.S. and Chinese economies, trade, as well as currency, intellectual property rights, and how the two economies can really achieve sort of win-win solution.
I see.
This is still a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I see that both countries have their own priorities. I was wondering if there are any priorities that the two countries have or conflict with each other.
For instance, U.S. now has a very serious unemployment. And employment for China is also at the top for its economic agenda, at least growth and employment. And it could easily be sort of trapped into a kind of dilemma or zero-sum. If we want to have more employment in U.S., seems China should pay some kind of cost. But this is not necessarily the only solution. But from those politicians either for election or for some other purpose, you can easily see people will blame the other, say you so-called steal the jobs from us. So I think on the one hand, each will need to ensure more employment. But on the other hand, we should avoid that type of zero-sum in order to increase or maintain employment. Then you blame the other.
I see. Well, some commentators in China suggest that although the U.S. often describes China-U.S. relations as both competitive and cooperative, in reality it often regards China more as a rival than a partner. So what do you think of such an assertion?
We used to describe the U.S.-China relations as something like frenemy.
Frenemy?
Yeah.
That's an interesting word.
Or containment, containing and engaging China. That's from U.S. side. And from the Chinese side, we usually described that kind of relationship as between good and bad. So it's not too good, not too bad. Not too good because we have three T's there. Taiwan, Tibet, plus Tiananmen. So it's not good enough. And not too bad because we have the fourth T, that's trade. So the trade between U.S. and China used to be such a base, very solid foundation for a kind of relationship. And nowadays you saw the first three T's, I don't think they are as serious as they were in the 80s.
They don't play as much as...
They are still problems, but they are not as so obvious as it was. They were. But the trade nowadays are much more complicated. It's not just a solid base for good U.S.-China relations. It can be also a source for problems. So therefore, I think U.S.-China relations can be described as very matured and so complicated. And someone, including Obama and his senior colleagues, in his first term, during the whole 4 years, they describe U.S.-China relations as the most complicated bilateral relations, most important, but also most complicated relations. So I think now for the next 4 years, for Obama and for the next 4 years, 5 years for us, we will need to not only leaders between the leadership, but China, U.S., the two biggest economies as well as the biggest countries. One has been the most powerful, another one is the rising power. How to work in spite of such issues, difficulties, problems, and challenges. Then to make sure the relationship is more than just manageable and also can provide sort of basic framework for the two countries and for the region, Asian Pacific, and for the world.
And in your opinion, would the U.S. continue its tendency of confrontation or even get tougher on China? As I remember, both U.S. presidential candidates swore to be tough on China if they're elected during their debates. So what do you think?
That was a very normal game, I think, for during the election. So we should not take those debates too serious, especially in terms of their wordings. Yeah? But rather to see how, after election, when they got into the office, what are their actual policies. And even in terms of policies, also we will see how they adjust, how they actually implement those policies. So I don't describe U.S.-China or U.S. approaches to China only as a confrontation. There are, as I said, difficulties, problems. Some are very serious. But there are also not only potentially, but actual sort of collaboratives. Lots of cooperations. More than just in economy, but in economy as well. So this will be a challenge for the two leadership, how to manage, maintain, and even improve the relationship for the two countries and for the region and even the world.